Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing you how I made this cute tear bustier. You can see I styled it in different ways. It's so lovely. Okay, if this is something you're interested in, you'd want to stick around. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much. I love you. If you're new here, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on your notification bell so you get notified when I post new videos like this. Alright guys, let's get started. So I forgot to mention earlier, this particular video is going to be the drafting part of this tube, and in my next video I'll be showing you how to join the pieces together. Okay, by the time I was done filming and editing, the video was just too long, so I had to divide it into two parts. All right, as you can see, I've divided my paper into two because I'm going to be drafting the front and back pattern together. Now I'm going to proceed to mark the bust length, the under bust length, the waist length, and the top length. I'm just remarking so I can have a straight line. I guess you should be used to that by now. Now proceed to use my ruler to make a line on the marked points. Now that is done, I'm going to proceed to label the lines. That's the bust line, the under bust, the waist line, and then the top length. After that is done, I'm going to proceed to mark my shoulder measurements divided by 2 and also come down by 1.5 inch on that point, which is going to be the shoulder slope. Afterwards, I'm going to proceed to mark the neck depth and neck width of 3 inches each, which is the usual standard measurements that we are used to. And then use my ruler to draw the round neck curve and also the shoulder slope line. Now I'm going to proceed to mark out the armhole measurement. You can either measure that and divide by 2, or you can do the calculation of dividing your bust by 6 and adding 1.5, which is also accurate. I'm going to roll out the line with my ruler now and then remark the shoulder measurements on that line and then draw a straight line connecting it back to the top of the paper, just as you can see. And I'll proceed to label this as the chest line. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to mark in the round measurements of each point divided by 4. So my round bust divided by 4 is 8.25, which I've just marked there. My round waist divided by 4 is 7.25, just as you can see, and I'll be adding 1 inch for that allowance. And then for the top length, I just measured the circumference of where the top is going to stop, and I had 32 inches there, so I'm dividing that by 4 and adding 0.5 inch. Now I'm going to use my ruler to rule out lines across the marked points. Now that is done, the next thing I'm going to do is to get the armhole curve, and for that I'm going to divide what I have from the shoulder slope to the chest line by 2 and mark out the midpoint, just as you can see, and then I'm going to go in by 0.75 and then use my ruler to draw out the armhole curve. Now the next thing I'm going to do is draw the dart leg, and to do that I'm going to be dividing my nipple to nipple measurement by 2 and mark it out on all the lines I have here. Mine is 7, so divided by 2 is 3.5. Alright, and then I'll proceed to mark a straight line, and then on the waistline I'm going to divide the 1 inch that I had marked previously for that allowance into 2. So on both sides of that straight line I'm going to mark 0.5 each, and then on the top length, the 0.5 I also added, I'm going to share it on both sides of the straight line, 0.25 each, and then draw the dart leg just as you can see. After that, I'm going to mark 2 inches below the bust line from which we will draw the bust dart leg. And to get the bust dart measurement, it is the difference between your front and back waist length. Alright, so I'm going to draw a line from that 2-inch marked point, connecting it to the bust point, just as you can see. Now that is done, we're going to leave this aside and move to the back pattern. Remember I told you I was going to be drafting the front and back together. So this is basically just a basic bodice that we've drafted. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing for the back. Now for the back pattern, where you have me start my tape placement from, it's going to be the center back. Okay, so I'm just marking my shoulder measurement divided by 2, and then the neck width, which is also 3 inches, but for the neck depth it's going to be 1 inch, and also for the shoulder slope it's also going to be 1 inch. And I'll proceed to use my ruler to do the needful like we did for the front pattern. Now that is done, I'm going to proceed to mark all the lengthwise measurements like we did for the front. I have the chest line, the bust line, and then for the waistline, remember we have a difference of 2 inches. So instead of 16 like we did for the front, the back is going to be 14 inches. Okay, and then for the length as well, we're going to raise it up by 2 inches, giving 19, so everything aligns back together. So I'm just remarking so I can have a straight line as usual, and I'll proceed to use my ruler to roll lines across the marked points. Okay. Next, I'm going to mark the shoulder measurement on the chest line and draw a straight line back to the top of the paper. Okay, and afterwards, I'm going to do the back tightening that I always do to get rid of the bulge. So on the waistline, I'm going to mark 0.5 inch in, just as you can see, and I'll connect it to the neck depth and the top length. So now that is done, I'm going to proceed to mark the round measurements divided by 4, and I'm going to be marking it starting from the 0.5 inch line, just as you can see, and I'll also add the 1 inch for that allowance on the waistline, so also the 0.5 inch allowance on the top length as well. And then proceed to use my ruler to draw lines on the marked points. Now the next thing to do is to draw the armhole curve just like we did for the front. The only difference is that we're going in by 0.5 for the back. Moving on, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, and I'm marking it starting from the center back line, not the 0.5 inch line that we did for tightening. Okay, and I'll proceed to roll a straight line across the marked points, and then go ahead to shear the darts allowance on the waistline just like I did for the front, 0.5 inch on both sides of the straight line, and then on the top length as well, 0.25 inch on both sides, and roll out the dart leg. After this, there is another form of tightening that I like to do on the waistline, where I have to go up and down the waistline with 0.25 inch, just as you can see, and connect it straight to the side back. Okay, this also helps to get rid of zip bulge as well, and it doesn't affect the length of the top or dress or whatever it is you're making. Okay, so you can go ahead to use your masking tape or gum to close that up, but we're going to leave that for now and come back to the front pattern. Okay, so I'm going to label the back and the front, and before we continue working on the front, I'm going to go ahead to cut the paper off. You know, we're going to be more flexible with the front pattern now, so we need the back pattern off for now. So yeah. So now that we're done detaching the back pattern, now we're going to close up the bust start. Okay, and when you close it up, you'll notice that there is a little excess there. Not to worry, we're going to fill it up. So I'm going to use my biro and my ruler to fill it up, just as you can see. After that, the next thing we're going to do is the underbust tightening. Okay, and I've said this before in previous videos that my underbust and my waist circumference is the same. Okay, so when you divide it by 4, I get 7.25. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is place my tape rule from the center front to the first dart leg, just as you can see. And what I have there, I'll just place it on the second dart leg and mark out 7.25. By the time I do that, I always have, say, about 1 inch, okay, left, which is what I'm going to use for the tightening. Okay, so if your round underbust is smaller or bigger than your round waist measurements, all you just have to do is divide it by 4, place your tape the way I did on the underbust line, mark out what you have, and then what is left is what you're going to use for your underbust tightening. Okay, and I also said in my underbust tightening video, and if you've not seen that, I'll leave the link in the description box for you to go check it out. If you're not going to be sharing it equally, make sure the bigger part is on the side front and the smaller part is on the center front. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead to share the 1 inch that I have for the underbust tightening, and I'm not going to be sharing it equally, so I'm going to put 0.25 towards the center front and 0.75 towards the side front, just as you can see, and I'll use my curve to make a curve line from the bust point to where I just marked. Afterwards, I'll use my long ruler to connect it to the waistline, just as you can see. I'm just blending to avoid any pointy corners over there. Now from the bust point, I'm going to go up by 3.5 inch. Okay, you can decide to use maybe 2 inch, 2.5, you know, it depends on how open you want your chest area to be, if you want to reveal so much boobs and all of that stuff. So I'm going up by 3.5 inch and I'm marking a broken line over there. Okay, after that, I'm going to extend the line from the bust line upwards because we're going to be doing the over bust tightening on that point. And next, I'm going to mark 0.75 on both sides. That is what I'm going to be using for the tightening. If you've seen my over bust tightening video, you would know what this is about. Okay, and I'm going to use my ruler. You don't want the curve to be too curvy, just slightly, and not so straight as well. Okay, after that is done, I'm going to mark out the cleavage depth that I want, and I'm going to be using 7.5 inch for that, which is slightly above the chest line. Okay, I'm not revealing nothing. Now the next thing I went ahead to do was to close the darts, and I marked 5 inches in, just as you can see from the center front. Okay, and I went ahead to use my ruler to mark out the kind of neckline that I wanted. You could make it a sweetheart neckline, or you could also do this. Okay, I just didn't want the regular sweetheart neckline. Okay, so afterwards I went ahead to draw another armhole from that point, just as I've pointed, and I connected it back to the previous one. Okay, so just watch what it is I'm doing. So that is basically all for the front pattern. I'll go ahead to cut it out now, and I'll close my bust dart in the process. Okay, so just watch and follow through. So I'm closing my bust dart. Like I said earlier, you could use your masking tape for this, but make sure to close your bust dart, okay? And I'm blending that point just to avoid the pointy edge and give it a rather much more blended curve. And I'll proceed to continue cutting. Now for the back pattern, we're going to go up by 3.5 inch from the bust line, just like we did for the front, and make a line over there. Now for the tightening at the back, I'm just going to be using 0.25 inch on both sides. Okay, so just watch, and I'm going to connect it back to the waistline. Now that I'm done with that, I'll proceed to close up the dart so I can draw the style line I want. You could cut it out straight. I actually wish I did cut it out straight at the end of the day, but I mean, there's no harm in trying different things, right? Alright, so before I do this, you can also decide how open you want your back to be. So from the neck depth, I came down by 7.5 inch. And then proceed to draw out the curve line, just as you can see. Like I said earlier, you could cut it out straight, okay? And one more thing, I think the depth of the back shouldn't be more than 8 inches, but I think everyone has their preference, right? So this is basically all for the back pattern. I'm just going to label the side back and the center back, and then we'll proceed to cut out the pattern. Also, don't forget to close your darts, okay, before you start cutting. And you could use your masking tape to hold it down, or your gum. Alright, but please make sure you close your darts before you start cutting. So guys, this is basically all for the drafting and cutting of the two bustier pattern. Remember to add your sewing allowances when cutting on your fabric, and in my next video we'll be joining the pieces together. Alright, if this is something you enjoyed watching, if you enjoyed the process, please give this video a thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe, engage my video please, and I'll see you in my next video where we'll be joining the pieces to create this beautiful top. Bye.